Welcome to this month's movie club. Today we are going to talk about The Crow from 1994, based on a comic from 1989. This movie was directed by Alex Proyas, who also directed I, Robot later on. Eric Draven in this is portrayed by Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee. We're going to talk about the movie, the stuff that's on screen, the stuff that's off screen. But first of all, I want to welcome my guests. Thank you for being here, Josh, Brand, and James. How are you doing?
Good now. I know I'm going to hate James by the end of this, so cheers.
Won't be the first time.
I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of disagreements, so I can't wait.
First of all, let's start with, is this your first time watching? It was my first time watching.
Yes.
I read the comic and watched the movie. And I left it at that because we are spoilers. We're not going to go into the sequels. I guess, based on your commentary prior.
I definitely watched it like years after it came out, but like this is probably like my third time watching it. I had to watch it on my phone this time though, because I thought I had my physical copy of it, but I guess I just was misplaced it. So watching on my phone was an experience because I'm like watching it like on the smallest screen possible. So I'm like, I feel I would like this better on like a TV.
Man, I popped in my special edition 2000 DVD and second DVD with the special features.
I'm jealous because I swear I had it, but I must have had it at my old house.
I won't lie. What's funny was because special feature, especially on a second disc, you're like, oh, there's going to be a ton. There's like an hour or something. I'm like, man, you could have thrown like newer DVDs would have thrown all this on one.
Should have thrown the extended cut on there.
I think this was my first time.
Your first time?
I think so.
My first time as well. And the overall theme of this movie, I guess, is revenge, if you want to call it, right? Josh, you don't agree with that necessarily? Because I know the book isn't necessarily. The comic book has a different vibe, has a different theme, has a different underlying tone and different message. Even though the major plot points are hit in the movie, but the movie kind of changed it up a little bit. It doesn't portray the same feelings, background, and all of that. So it felt to me the movie was more made like just a revenge story, instead of a psychological insight into how his mind works, how he copes with the pain, how he deals
How he came back to life.
his life. Well, yeah, he's crawling out of his grave, literally.
And don't give me a reason why or how.
He's not a skeleton after a year. It's just perfectly fine.
So,
all right, no, Josh.
I will apologize. I saw this when I was like 13 or 14, bought the DVD years later. So it's like, there's a lot of nostalgia for me. There's a lot of like, it's weird, especially it's weird watching it now because I relate to Eric a little bit more. Well, we'll touch on that later. I think if you describe the movie, you look at the surface level plots, it's a revenge. Yeah, it's a revenge kind of movie. And especially what's crazy is if you take the same plot in the 90s, get rid of all the like heart and emotions, it's pretty much Spawn. Like they're very similar.
Almost.
Yeah.
Spawn had a bit of plot.
James, you mother. Now here's the thing. See, I actually enjoy that you don't know what the deal was, why he came back. Like, did he make a deal with the Crow? Like, was it because in some ways I always think about him like, was he like just so angry, felt like things were so robbed that he had to do this because he couldn't enjoy like a afterlife with Shelley because everything was taken from him. And especially like a lot of the characters, a lot of the dialogue. Also, man, I'm going to talk a lot about this movie, but this movie also feels like a comic book because even in some of like the sets and stuff, like the hot dog stand, I'm like, that literally feels like a panel where it's like here's the hot dog stand, here's a little bit of the city, but not enough to be like this is an actual street. Because if you think about like the only people in this are like villains or like their immediate characters. You don't get any background characters. Like for a city, it is very vacant.
Right, like it says it's in Detroit, but honestly, if they didn't tell me it was Detroit, I could have been mistaken this was Gotham City, almost.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
for the
just
Ghostbusters.
I always just viewed it as the city. Like it doesn't matter where, it's just the city.
Well, like Detroit is like they say Devil's Night, that's actually a thing in Detroit. So like there is some actual like real world history there. Ironically enough, like it's not so bad now with the Devil's Night stuff, but like 1994 it actually was so bad that they had to have like Angel's Night in order to like counterbalance that. So
But do they have gift cards now?
see, I don't know about that. That was a pretty funny line. But I think he's more talking about like how commercial like they've gotten like, oh, we're more focused on the money part of this than like causing chaos.
I mean, it's based in Detroit. James O'Barr, who wrote the comic, is from Detroit, and the comic is based in Detroit. I guess they just adapted that one to one. They didn't adapt necessarily everything. I think the background, how they were murdered, it changed from the comic to the
What
movie.
what is it in the comic?
In the comic, they break down with their car on a road, and the kind of the same characters then pass by and rob them and murder them. So not only I mean that's not even that important to have it based in an apartment or outside at the road. But I think in the movie they actually gave them a reason, like you sent in this letter to what the HOA or the renters, whatever.
Right,
So
which I
you
know
caused this. We're here to rectify what you complained about. While in the book was completely random act. They just broke down on the road and then the random car stopped and they were all high on stuff and then killed them.
Yeah, in the movie, like it was Shelley and by extension Eric basically trying to fight for like the tenant relocation program is what it's called because of like they were trying to like fight like all that stuff happening and they got caught in the crossfire of all of it.
Well, and it makes sense too, because it's like you set a bunch of fires, you burn, you can get people to exit out of the buildings and buy the buildings for cheap, sell them at a profit. Or you can also extort for insurance. Like there's all extortion, there's various versions. So in some ways, like that makes a little bit more sense. The You haven't gotten into it, but the whole random act via the car makes a little bit more sense for James O'Brien since this is based off his girlfriend who got killed by a drunk driver.
Yeah, and the scenery in the movie, I guess everything is kept in the city, and the sets that they had is basically like pretty much the same block. Like you have the outside shots, even though those aren't helicopter or drone shots. That's like a little play set, and they move the camera, which actually looks pretty cool for '94 and for the budget that they had. Again, they probably put most of the budget in CGIing or like copy pasting. It wasn't really CGI, but copy pasting the face of Brandon Lee over the stunt double. But with regards to the practical effects of like bird's eye view of the city, it was actually pretty well made. You could tell it's fake, but it was in a style that was pretty cool. It reminded me of like Tim Burton, and in that sense makes sense that you don't place like the initial scene and the backflash is somewhere outside in like the countryside and have the car break down there if the rest of the movie all plays within the same city block or one or two city blocks.
Also,
Well, like
that sorry, Brian, but that model it gave it a very unique look because it's like you've had that in sci-fi and stuff, but not in like a noir like crime. And like I said, the city seems so vast and huge. That's why I always just assume it was the city. Like,
I will say how great for cinematography that like their loft was like facing outwards with from like the window. Like that looks cinematically like gorgeous. Like I wonder how much that cost.
I thought the whole time, like if you clean up that apartment, like that's a pretty cool spot to live in.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like, man, if this was like a lot nicer, I would like to live here too.
I
You
think
can't move there nowadays.
I think the idea of it though, they use them as a warning where it's like you all can talk about it, but the murder, like they had like cause even the police tape was still up there. To quote another movie, when bison entered your village, it was the worst day of your life. For me, it was a Tuesday, and that was top dollar. Like this death wasn't important. It was a little like not worth remembering.
By the way, top dollar, fantastic villain in this. Like, if you want a kingpin villain, like this is like a good one to have. Like, I wanted to see him get his ass kicked by the end of it. Like how, like spoilers for later, but how he meets his end is so poetically
It has a
exactly.
lot to do with Michael Wincott's performance. I think he's by far the best actor in this. Um, I know everyone's praising Brandon Lee. I don't know how much nostalgia plays with that. I didn't like his performance in the beginning of the movie. It got better later on when he talked to what's his name, the cop, because he kind of loosened up. But in the beginning, he was too wooden, too much of a corpse. Like I came back from the dead, and now I have to walk and talk and act like I'm a skeleton. While that didn't really fit the whole vibe, he wasn't really like, I don't know, based on the comic again. I should ignore the comic at some point, but it wasn't meant to be like, oh, like a zombie crawling out of the grave and then getting used to it. It's like no, like it's more on a mental level, like it's metaphorical, like he's coming back from the dead, but not the dead because he's coping. Like the whole comic book is like coping with the death of the girlfriend or fiance, and he coming back and playing it like I'm a zombie for the first few scenes didn't really jive with me. So
I didn't see it like that at all. I saw it as like kind of disorientated because you're coming literally out of the grave and trying to figure out like what's going on. Like you've never been dead at all.
I see, man, I saw it a completely different way than you two. I saw it as he knew why he was coming back. Like he knew I'm coming back to kill these four fuckers. Like that's my goal. And I think the thing is, because I always viewed him like an echo, because he knows he's not supposed like he doesn't belong here. This isn't for him. And his goal is he's like, I just want to kill the people responsible and not do any damage and just leave. Because like you can kind of
He
tell because at the
he
beginning,
did
like
damage.
no, but I'm talking about like to Sarah, the people he cared about, he didn't want to like ruin their lives. Because at the beginning, when he jumps off the building and laughs, that's a realization like, I don't feel anything. I can do this. I like,
There's
So
also like
he was hiding the whole movie,
he was what?
high on drugs.
No, he was, it's a range of emotions because it's probably like not quite, but it's the stages of grief because it's like it was rage at the beginning. And you can kind of tell because like a little later in the movie, when he grabs the guitar and he's playing it, like that's him enjoying a moment of life that he can't enjoy later. But then he smashes it because it's like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be doing this.
I also know there's probably somebody on the audience who saw him like continuing playing the guitar and like, for someone so desperate on revenge, why does he keep playing guitar every 5 minutes? And like to have some type of connection to his previous self, I imagine. But that's why he's like touching like objects and like getting like flashbacks and memories from it, like object transference almost. Because he's touching like rings, trying to get like something out of it until he finds the one he's looking for. He's like looking at old photographs. He's like trying to recall like past memories of his to almost, in my way of thinking of it, kind of further his goal in a sense, like motivation for why he's doing what he is.
I think with the crow, it gives him the power through grief. Because it's also look at the way he killed the four villains. Because it was Tintin, T-Bird, Skank, and Funboy. But he killed each of them in a way that what they did. Because like T-Bird, his whole thing was arson / his car. Tintin was the knives, and especially because he stuck Eric. Fun Boy, you don't know. In some
Drugs.
ways, like you get the idea. It's like, did he give Shelly some heroin? Like, did he do that to her? And then
Well,
with Skank, like threw him off the building.
Skank was probably like the most like, well, you're basically like
You're
not
gone.
even. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the crow, I mean, the crow comes in that in the movie. The crow comes in, and it's said like the crow transports the soul from the living to the dead, but in some cases brings it back if things are very wrong, to make things right. And you get the explanation why he's brought back to make things that are very wrong right. And that's his goal in the short span, like 2 days or something that he has, to correct those and then kind of go back to his previous state.
Josh, you might know this, but I think there was supposed to be like before all the stuff happened with Brandon Lee. I think there was going to be a scene where it does explain like the whole like living and dead connection and how he's still tethered. But I think they got cut out because it would have not fit the tone of the movie they were going for at that point.
I've heard mixed things because I know like they finished like 90% of the shoot. Like they finished most of the movie, hence how they could finish it after the tragedy. Because you can kind of tell it's when he jumps up on the table, and then like once he leaves the room, I think like most of that was stunt double work. Because if memory serves right, like they didn't. I don't think they used the footage. I don't think they legally can use the footage of Brandon Lee getting shot. But then like a lot of it, because if you look, like all of a sudden he's using guns in a better way. Like he's fighting in a more like superhero way than I think would have happened if that accident never happened.
See, I don't know because like from what I've always heard, it was like 8 days until like the end of filming was when the accident happened. So like I'm guessing most of that was already filmed. And be quite honest, like if you're, I feel like even when I was looking for it, like the face compositing and stuff like that, I didn't even notice it half the time. Like it looks so
Yeah.
convincing.
I noticed that some scenes he really like they try to show him from the back, but it was only because I knew that he wasn't that there were scenes and there was stunt double. And yeah, it's somewhat like 8 days before the end. I think one scene from the front when he was standing in front of the window and is about to jump out. That's the scene in his apartment with the arms to the side. From the front, they kind of copy paste his face on the stunt double. I don't know how they did it technically, probably on the film in the end, like overlaying multiple screens. But those are the scenes. This I think is the only scene where they kind of showed the stunt double from the front. Everything else you can tell if you know that when he climbs up the stairs, they only show him from the back. When he's running, sometimes they only show him from the back. But those are also scenes that they would have probably shown Brandon Lee from the back as well.
I also know because originally the studio wanted to can this, but his fiance and mother, and I think honestly, I hate to say it, the mom probably had bigger voice because I think because the same thing, the freaky thing is the same or a similar thing happened to Bruce Lee on the set of Game of Death.
In that case, though, Brandon Lee, so for anyone who doesn't know, like he died by a blank. So what they use for those prop guns, or they're using blanks in movies, and then the one blank got stuck in the gun, and then firing the next blank basically used the empty other blank as a projectile, and that's what hit him. And
I don't know if it's true or not. I heard a rumor that like they were trying to save money and didn't buy like the best blanks or something. Like it was something happened where it was neglect on the prop master's part, but I could be wrong.
And the person they had is like the firearms like specialist, like the consultant. They sent him home early while before this is all happening. So that a lot of what happens seems to be like negligence or like really bad safety standards at the time, which is kind of sad because some of that kind of still carries over to nowadays too. If you look at productions like Rust with Alec Baldwin, like some of the stuff still happens.
Because I feel like I'm the minority here. I really like Brandon Lee's portrayal in this, and I'm very curious what his career would have been because it's like he could show you do action. He showed a little bit of drama and heart, but he also made some great one-liners. So I'm like honestly, I could see the Matrix him being Neo if he lived.
Honestly, if he lived, I could have seen this been like his star-making performance, and that might seem like a bit like hyperbole, but it's like, no, like I agree. Like he has a lot of charisma. He's funny, and at times when he needs to be, he's also like has a lot of like heart and like charm to like what he's portraying, while also still being like a menace at times too. Like he has like a lot of range in this one role.
Because especially like, is that gasoline I smell? Like there are a lot of great there are a lot of lines that aren't well written, but he performed them in a way that make them iconic.
Yeah, it feels like '90s cheese, but done like in an edible way. If you want to go with that.
Also, it's a little thing, but like onto the pawn shop, the whole like him throwing each ring and being like, "This is a life you ruined." Like that's not a bad way to look at it because it's like it's easy to think it's like, "Oh, this is just merchandise." He's buying stuff off the beginning, not giving two craps about what they are.
Yeah, and he knows that this is not stuff that was like given to the pawn shop. That all came from Top Dollar or like those guys.
Wait a minute, who sold it to him? Which one of the four?
I know.
I know,
I don't. You tell me.
Tintin.
Tintin did.
See, that's what I like. Because normally, like the henchmen like this, usually like, oh, that's so and so, or this is like henchman number 5. But like, I like how they got distinct personalities and like gimmicks, if you will. Like David Patrick Kelly's like David Patrick Kelly in this. If you ever seen him act before, but he plays such a good scumbag that I could believe like a person like this actually exists.
Who did he play?
He played T-Bird.
Oh man, what's crazy is because they did a behind the scenes documentary. So I'm used to T Bird being T Bird. Then yeah, listening to him as the actor and he's like talking about Shakespeare and like how deep this plot is. You're like, how the hell are you T Bird?
Well, like the thing is, like it fits that character so well because this is also the same actor who was in the Warriors, like the Coke bottle scene when like Warriors come out and play.
Really?
Same actor.
Huh.
Also, Commando. He's Sully, like in who gets like dropped down. Like, David Patrick Kelly is an underrated character actor.
I think and I'm with you on this. I enjoy how each henchman, especially like, good God, what a year for Skank. Because it's like he went from like, oh, okay, you look like a not a decent member of society, but you still are a functioning human being, to like, you are going to be dead in a month no matter what happens.
Seeing him grocery shop was like I felt like he was picking up random stuff and just like carrying it with him. Like he was picking up chips. Like all he was told was like pick up cigarettes and road beers, and then he's picking up potato chips and whatever else he finds in the grocery store, and then runs out with none of it.
You could tell from the moment he stepped into that store, like he has no intention of paying for any of that. It's just like
No.
You almost know the clerk's just like, I do not want to deal with Top Dollar, but get the hell out of here.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I just know it's gonna come back to bite me. Whatever, man.
Also, I think the other kind of entertaining part, we're kind of bouncing all over, but like Top Dollar clearly has his little crew, and he'll talk to T Bird, but he doesn't talk to T Bird's men. Then at the end, all of a sudden, he has to deal with Skank, and he's like, wow.
Yeah, he's like, wow, I feel like I need to slow motion this so I can tell what's going on.
it's kind of in the comic where Eric like builds his way up from like, okay, I got this information, because he starts also, I don't know who those guys are, so he finds someone who is able to tell him one other name, and then he goes to that guy and it's like, tell him one other name, and he works his way up to Top Dollar.
Real quick, and this is just my nerdy side coming out. I recognize one of the swords that Top Dollar had. Literally, the one he used to stab Gideon with is the same one the six-fingered man had in Princess Bride. I catch these things, and I wish I didn't, because then it just drags the conversation down. It's one of those things like
I like how
The
Brand's
Princess,
like,
the Princess Bride was a better movie than this. I will say that.
I like how
it's a
Brand's
better
like,
revenge
here's
movie,
some fun
probably. Yeah.
information I wish I didn't have. By the way,
No, I wish, like I knew. So there is a action figure of Eric with the sword or what looked like a sword. I was like, what crazy ass sword is that? And then I saw that before I watched the movie, and I watched the movie. That's not a sword. That's the spike of the of the building where he like rips that off and uses that amazing scene, and like that action figure comes with that thing as his sword.
sir, that was the most goth sword we've ever gotten.
It was already a part of a church.
Going back to the actors or actresses, I guess Brandon Lee's death not only ruined his career, well, ruined more than his career,
Put a
but it doesn't
damper.
only raise the question of what if for him, but the actress, and I forgot her name, but the one that played the kid, Sarah, I think her career was also somewhat ruined, or at least after. Okay, as you can imagine, like the other older actors, they were all like, okay, well, we carry on. They could cope with that a little bit better. Being a kid on set and seeing your co-worker, co-actor die, and like they had a close relationship, I guess I probably did something else. And then later on, promoting the movie or later on taking on other roles, I think the media, most interviews that she had were just going back to how was it like to have Brandon Lee die, and all the questions that she got were around Brandon instead of her acting career or anything else, which messed up with her mind. And then she completely stopped acting after that because everything was just around Brandon's death.
Which
Then
is
you
a
also
shame.
have Fun Boy, who just took a break from acting altogether because he was the actor who like fired the prop gun. So that weighed on
Oh,
his conscience a lot.
oh, really?
That was like that scene was when like the shot took place, and that was also something like when that actor passed away. I think it was Michael Massey. When he passed away, that was still in the obituaries. Like, oh, this is the same actor who fired the shot that killed Brandon Lee.
Yeah, because it's during the scene where he jumps up on the table and everyone's shooting at him, right?
No, this is like
In
before
the
that. This is like
apartment.
the apartment when like Darla is there and Fun Boy's with her.
Really?
hmm
I always thought it was a scene where Top Dollar's at the end where he jumps up on the table and everyone, check this out. I've been living a lie. Oh
It's
man,
not the first. It's not the first time.
James, if I could boot you off of here, I would.
See, there's gotta be a reason why I'm here. It's probably just to give Josh like epiphanies like this.
Because yeah, that. Well, let's go. Just I don't want to jump. Sarah's career was ruined by this. Then we ignore Sarah completely. She's one of my favorite. She's one of my favorite characters in this because especially it's like I feel like
She was the heart of the movie.
and everyone's like you see how much like Shelley and Eric's death like affected her life in the negative.
hmm
Yeah, and I wish this was one of the examples that's done better in the movie than in the book. So in the comic book, she's there, but it's like a side figure. Like Eric meets her, and he's like, "Well, we'll see each other again. They see each other one more time." He does like tell her mom, like, "Hey, don't mess around. Like you are." Like her mom, like what is it in a kid's eyes? God, the word for God is mom, something like that. That quote like is taken from the book, but then you don't see Sarah much after. So, and Sarah and Eric didn't know each other in real life. He just runs into her because her mom is upstairs with Tintin, and she is downstairs waiting. And there's no whole lot of a backstory or further story around Sarah. It's just she exists, and I don't think she's actually called Sarah, but yeah, they just changed the name.
Yeah,
It's kind of she was.
Oh, you mean the book? My bad.
In the book. No, she had a similar name to Shelley, which was Sherry or something. But when I got there, I was like, oh, that's the redemption story. Like, okay, he lost his fiancée, maybe he takes on the kid and like raises it, but no, none of that happened. So the book stays very dark, and there is no real like redemption, or not redemption because he hasn't done anything wrong, but no positive outlook on life other than
Revenge.
no, not revenge, but so that's the main difference, right? Like the movie isn't as dark as the book. The book is very inward, and the crow isn't actually there to give him his strength. Like in the movie, he gets his strength from the crow, because when the crow was shot, he loses his powers. That doesn't happen in the book. The book really has the crow only as his inner mind. The crow basically just tells him, like, don't try to remember what happened to your fiance. Don't look back. Don't remember anything. Like, don't do this to you. This is messed up. Like, you're gonna get hurt again. Just focus on what you're here to do, which is kill those guys, but don't try to remember. And of course he remembers, and it goes into dark places, and where at some point it gets very suicidal, and like it's way darker and more inward driven than the movie. But again, in the movie you can't do this. This is like still needs to make money. You can't have just a character with depression sitting there thinking about killing himself. And I guess just had to change to a more revenge arc versus inner monologue.
I feel like I'm the only human being, maybe the only individual. When I watch this movie, even as like when I saw this as a kid, the whole like the crow gives him his powers. You shoot the crow, you get rid of his powers. I'm not believing crazy half sister incest eye eating bitch. Like there is nothing in her character that tells me she knows anything. What I think happens is his powers start to go away when he finishes his work. But the problem is he's got all of that pain from Shelley that he doesn't want to take back with him, but he doesn't know what to do with it.
The problem with that theory, Josh, is the fact that they actually do shoot the crow and wound it, which does start making like Eric actually feel pain and like get shot and not heal from it. Like, ow, that actually hurt. And, like falls over.
But he doesn't get shot from when Fun Boys dies to then. He doesn't get shot. So we don't know if it's a coincidence or it's a cause and effect.
Oh, he does. He gets shot
by Fun Boy. He gets shot at the crime meeting. He gets
not Fun Boy. Sorry, Skank. Once he throws Skank off the building, he doesn't get shot again until by Top Dollar.
But he gets shot so many times. On 3 occasions, you can see his hand healing. You can see his stomach healing.
That's
literally,
Fun Boy.
the skin is going.
Yeah, but I'm talking about with Skank.
The crime meeting.
Yeah. Because he kills Skank, goes off, has a little Halloween fun moment, tries to go back into the grave, and that's when crazy half-sister and Top Dollar get Sarah. Then he gets shot.
I do think cops do kind of nick him a bit, and also like him just jumping off and falling into a homeless shelter and then getting picked up by Ernie Hudson in the car. He starts feeling a little bit of pain there, but I think it's also because mentally he's thinking, okay, I've had my revenge. It's time for me to like head back and put myself to rest, until he finds out that Sarah's back and being like caught in the trap. That he's like, oh, I still got work to do, and then meets Top Dollar and company.
Like I said, and you can use all the logic you want. I will never accept that crazy incest, I like the pretty lights, was right.
See, what was weird about that character was like, I feel like that character was in there just to give like this movie a little bit more of a spiritual bent to it that we didn't get in like most of the final movie. Because like you said, most of the final movie, it's kind of, how I put it, except for when like Eric gets shot, a lot of this movie is kind of like down to earth in a sense. Like there's not a whole lot of supernatural like elements going on in it.
The only other time is with the morphine scene.
Mm-hmm. Because he like literally purges the morphine out of her body. That's gross.
And we got future Marker Cree game with the crow eyesight.
Yeah. That in the fire escape, when like Eric is posing on top of the fire escape, that to me was like, oh, this would be like exactly a comic book panel shot.
There were many a moments where I'm like, that's very much a comic book shot. Especially like all of Gideon's The Shadow. I'm like, man, a lot of this, I'm like, I would not be surprised if it was panel for panel.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do know Brandon Lee and the director had to fight a lot to get this close to the comic. Because there were talks of like Michael Jackson and having it be more poppy and bright.
To make this a musical. So that's why
Yeah.
I said let's record, because we were talking a little bit about this before. And what if they made it a musical? And yeah, then it came to my mind, and I heard like Michael Jackson was asked to play this role, or they wanted to do that first. And
I mean, we kind of get it. There's a band playing music at the club they're at, so I guess that technically counts.
Oh,
But I
you
do
get the
like
remake. It might be
I
a
do like how
musical.
most of the soundtrack is diegetic because it's not like most like movies like this. You would have like songs playing to like the action themselves, like licensed music playing to the action themselves. A lot of this is like you hear stuff like playing on the radio, it plays on the radio, and most of this is kind of driven by the score, not so much by like the popular music going on at the time.
the music is very well embedded in this movie. It doesn't stand out. The only song that really stands out to me, and I know you guys love the soundtrack. I haven't listened to the soundtrack individually, and in the movie it doesn't really pop out because it's so perfectly like tied in. The only song or the only scene that I remember that stands out music wise is when the band is playing, and that being the focus.
That also, because rewatching this, that reminded me of like Ace Ventura. Like, I wonder if it was a 90s thing where it's like it's cheaper to hire the band to play in the movie.
I
And
think that was a Jim Carrey thing because he loves thrash metal actually.
no, but he loves that. He loves thrash. You're correct on that. But I'm just saying, like, I wonder if it was a producer thing where it's like it's cheaper to hire the band for the night to be background than to pay for the music rights.
Hmm.
Maybe you get them for free because they want to promote their song too.
Right?
Best promotion. But going back to how much pain tolerance he has, I think that changes constantly throughout the movie. In the beginning, the first fight he has with the first guy, I forgot his name, but like with the guy with the
Tintin.
knives, the guy with the knives, he he can't even get up when he gets some punches in. Like he gets punched a few times and he's like almost like he's down for the count until he gets up, and it's like very difficult for him. And later on he just takes a shot to the chest and he's like, well, you see, this is healing, no problem. So it's maybe he has to learn
I think
that, well, it actually isn't. Like I remember how pain would feel, and I stay down if I get punched a few times in the face. And later on, he's like, "Yeah, it actually isn't that bad anymore. I didn't know that changed in me."
I
I
think the
think
other
of it more like the Wolverine kind of thing where it's like, oh, I got shot. Yes, it hurts, but I can heal from this.
I'm in the opposite camp. I don't think it hurts him. I also think he's a musician and he's a terrible fighter. So like when he got knocked down, it wasn't like, oh, it hurts him. I think he's literally like, what the hell do I fight? Like, especially against like Fun Boy, against some of them, he's literally just almost throwing his body at them. Like,
I mean, Funby shoots himself more so than like whatever Eric does to him.
and we get that great iconic, oh man, uh, one of my favorite lines from that movie
Which is,
is God is the name of, or mother is the name of God on every child's lips and hearts.
there you go. That's the one I was mentioning earlier with regards to Sarah. No, there's great lines in the comic that they took from here. That's one of them. One other, I don't know if it actually made it into the movie, but it was one line that stood out. It's like, it's not death if you refuse it. It is if you accept it. So it's kind of like bringing this back to the psychological level. Like this all is just in his head, and he refuses death until things are clear, and that's where he gets his power from, his strength from, to make things right. And then after that, it's fine, and then he can go back and die next to the grave that he came out of.
Did you all watch the behind the scenes like
Nope.
mini documentary?
I didn't have time. I'm sorry.
I watched the interview that you posted with James Labar. You okay?
Well, I mean, that is a line in the movie, just like longer.
That is. So what's really haunting, and it's like I know they put in this because of Brandon Lee. But one thing Brandon Lee talks about, I forget the book. He read some book where he talked about, he's like, I think it fits perfectly in this movie. He's like, life feels like an infinite well, but it's not. He talks about like you don't know how many moments you have. It's like you only have like 3 moments remembering this great childhood memory. You only have 2 moments. It's like how many times do you have to read your favorite book, enjoy your favorite dish? So it's like I think that also goes along with like I said with the crow, because it's like it's him remembering things, but it's also God, it's like for Eric, because it's like his band was just about to hit it big. He was about to get married. Like everything was just about to happen and then cut short.
See, what's also kind of tragic about this is like it kind of makes watching this movie a little bit difficult too, because like literally we're watching like the last performance of Brandon Lee on screen when he's saying this stuff. So it's like, wow, this is actually kind of true in a sense. Even when you're filming a movie, it could end at any time.
There's one scene where he's saying like, "You can shoot me." Doesn't like. I was like, oh, that's not how
Well,
real life works, and that's yeah.
I'm
See, that's
dead.
another
So
thing is like David Patrick Kelly's going nuts in the car when he's all tied up. Like, it's not how the real world works. Nothing comes back. Nothing comes back. And he goes like mad saying that repeatedly.
that
Like,
was that was such a great scene, especially since Eric doesn't say anything, and it's like, oh, that was
he's the most Spectre like when that happens, is like when he doesn't say anything to like T Bird while he's like tying him up and all that stuff and sending him on his merry way.
and especially quoting that and the devil, like what was that? The devil shrank away because of how pure good was. I'd
I
ask
think
James to look
so.
it up, but he's literally just writing negative reviews on The Crow.
I think they're doing good.
I'm not saying it's a great movie. It was a good movie. The comic is actually great. It is very. It's not an uplifting. It wouldn't fit Melanie's like uplifting spirit books. It's like one of the darkest books I've read, where it's really just, and it's like yeah, James O'Barr just coping with the loss of his fiance, and like after you watch the interview with him, and thanks for posting that earlier, Josh, the 4-part interview there where he talks about his life, and you think like, holy crap, this guy has experienced more bad things by the time he was like 5 than any of us. Always like about his like birth parents that were on drugs, or his mom that was on drugs, him going to an orphanage, being kind of tried out on weekends by possible adoptive parents that gave him back after the weekend, that either got money for that but like should have never been allowed to have a child at home, to actually being adopted, where he's like, yeah, but it didn't really matter, and like later on in life he appreciated his dad for it, but he was like 80-90 hours away like working, and they actually told him he's not allowed to draw at home because drawing, following an artist career is not the way of living. You have to do a proper job, blue collar working job. So he was not allowed to draw. And then when he found the love of his life, she was killed by a drunk driver, taken out of his life. It's like, dude, like whatever you touch, like, and then again, that's why he blames himself for then his book that took like 9 years to make, because he's like, I had such problems making this comic because it took me so much effort and so much emotional energy that I had to put my pencil away after every second page or so. Then it's turned into a movie, and then Brandon Lee dies on set. Like, fuck.
I was gonna say that, yeah, that also too had to hit hard where it's like, oh, cool, I finally am making a movie. Oh, and this guy who really cared about my work and performance died. Like,
For me, this movie felt more like a TV episode, a pilot in a movie.
I don't think I agree. It felt like a movie. It's like a 90s movie, a good
I
90s
felt I
movie.
watched The sequels feel like TV movies than this ever does.
Not a TV episode, right? It's pilot episode almost.
But it was almost 2 hours. I mean, nowadays those episodes. But
Josh,
what would the next episode be then? Like I think the arc is concluded, right? Like usually episodes stand out as well.
But he'll go on, find
tune in
something else
next
to do,
week.
and
Try
do
to find something else to write.
It would be
like
the sequel
Ghostlight
to
almost.
people being possessed by the crow, if you will. So it wouldn't be any
Or
good.
quote the wave and nevermore.
I think James just wants to wants to test out Josh's limits.
He really does. He really does.
I mean, it wasn't horrible. I mean, I'll probably give it 8 out of 10.
Oh, that's better than my rating. But
Having problems with both of you right now, just so you know.
again, it wasn't a bad movie. I just like maybe don't
You're
give
making me agree with
good
Josh.
movies an 8. A movie would have to be great to get an 8 or a 9. Like I don't know. Again, some of it may. Again, I wish I'd watched the movie first before reading the book. Again, this is me again getting punished for doing too much homework. And it was only the comic, the source material, and the movie. I didn't even go and watch the sequels, right? Like or watch the TV show.
That would have punished you more. So maybe you should have.
Or play the video game. But no, I like the movie the comic book was just such a deep dive into his psychology, and he's taking in all the musical elements that are in the movie are in the background, right? Like, but he's tying in song text. I think I posted one of the pages there, which is like just the lyrics of like a Hitchcock song, and just going through them one by one as he's describing the scene, how Eric goes and like kind of stalks out his next victim, his next revenge victim. And The Cure has like the book has like just song lyrics in between pages, like not even any graphics, just the texts, poems, all of that stuff, and it goes really into his mental state of mind, versus the movie doesn't. So I was waiting for that dark moment for the movie to go internal, but it never does. So watching the movie isolated from the book, I think would have probably been different. But to me, it felt like a letdown of not having Eric experience that pain, because it's really, you feel the pain that Eric has versus just him taking revenge, but you don't have the whole crazy pain.
I like how Torsten is sitting there with his martini being like, all I need is some drops of tear to finalize this drink.
Not tear, but like to stop, pause a second and reflect.
For me, it felt like especially the flashbacks to like his memories, stuff like that. It felt more like to me like show, don't tell, because I think we could obviously have like monologues from Eric about like what he's feeling, like how he's feeling. But I think the fact that like you're getting flashbacks from like previous lives and stuff like that, like you're getting like visual representations like what his past life was like and all the happy memories he's experiencing from it. You don't necessarily need to have Eric tell you when you can just show you, especially for something like this, where like
I agree.
Visuals.
I agree, and I mean, in the book, it's the same way. Like he remembers, he goes to the apartment and he sees the things that remind him of her, and that's when the crow comes in and says, like, "Don't do this to you. Like, don't go there. Don't go into those dark places." And he does that, and then you see the flashback of them, like being happy together. And then you flashback, but in his whole mind, he's not just constantly out killing people. He's just like a lot of times also just just a little bit more poetic, I guess.
There's also that scene where like Sarah's trying to like track him down in like his old loft, and there's like before she gets there, Eric is like burning and ripping up like old photographs. I'm assuming it was like of both of them, but I couldn't tell which ones he was keeping, which ones he's like tossing out.
I feel like he was tossing all of them because like I said, to me, this always felt like he knows he doesn't belong in this world anymore. Like,
yeah, no use keeping these material possessions because I don't need them where I'm going. Kind of a thing.
I think too, like in a lot of ways, it's him trying to get past the pain and anger to move on. Because, I mean, especially, and on top of it, he's going through all this. Then he gets on the added 30 hours of additional pain that he took on without realizing it.
Which, by the way, Ernie Hudson, if he wasn't in this movie, I don't know if like Eric Draven would have gotten out of this alive, honestly. Considering like Ernie Hudson, like giving him the memories of like being there with Shelley helped Eric beat Top Dollar at the end.
Also, well, one with Ernie Hudson, I feel like he's always gotten the short stick because, like, even in this, he does a great job. And it's like, for whatever reason, he never got past that, like into a leading role, big movie. It's like, I think he could have handled it.
He definitely can. He's a very capable actor, and like stuff like this and Ghostbusters shows he has range. Like he's comedic in Ghostbusters, and he's like very somber and like melancholy in this, but still having like those Jim Gordon lines where he's like, "Yeah, you just got to get used to that." When Eric is disappearing all the time.
And he's been in a bunch of movies, just not that many lead roles of successful movies, but his filmography, that's like at least 50, 60 movies,
And it's a little
TV
dumb,
shows as well.
it's a little dumb line, but the whole like you're still wearing your hat.
Yeah, but his like thing is like I would suspect he would point that out to him, like, "Oh yeah, I am.
It was just a great moment where you're like, okay, yeah.
What are you, a ghost?" Boo.
I love that connection when Eric becomes real, like instead of this figure back from the death, he becomes more human again, and then he talks to, I forgot the name of Ernie in his character, but the cop. So
I actually don't recall that, and I was trying to pay
Daryl.
attention to it. Like I was even trying to pay attention to like who the detective was. It wasn't until they said, "Oh, detective, what was it?" That I was like,
Tours.
Sergeant Daryl Albrecht. Okay, well, I
"Oh, I
think,
think I say Albrecht like once, but like
yeah.
nothing for me. Like, oh, that's his name."
Yeah, but I love that scene where he's like, you can tell he changes his demeanor, Eric does, and like, it's like, no, I don't need to give you attitude. Like, you're a good guy. Let's talk properly.
He convinces him not to smoke anymore.
I think that did change. It was around the late 80s, early 90s when they considered cigarettes as bad, right? 80s more than 90s.
Well, what's
But
weird, it was weird watching the behind the scenes because, like, I'm assuming it was all done in like one interview, but Brandon Lee was smoking the whole time. So it's just kind of weird to see now, like, because you never see that nowadays, a lead actor, like,
But
just
that's
stop.
only 10 years ago when they stopped. Like this year, there's still some bars you are allowed to smoke in, right? But like most restaurants are smoke free for no more than 10, 15, maximum 20, not even 20 years. I remember being in bars in 2006, 7, where nightclubs where people were smoking.
Yeah, it's like how we talked about like with Die Hard, and how like feels like a period of his time. This one definitely feels like a period of his time too. Like it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, this is definitely like feels like it's the 90s.
Especially the iconography, like, especially with the crow, like, all that iconography. I'm like, this feels, and I mean in a good way, the product of its time, where it's like, because part of me doesn't want to bring it up, but it's kind of the elephant in the room. Because I watched the trailer to the new movie, and I'm like, woof.
Well, I mean, it will fit better talking about it here than any other time. But yeah, I would agree. Even 30 years later, watching this one, I feel like this has a lot more style to it and a lot more substance of it than I feel like we would ever get out of the remake for it. And of course, I could be wrong. I don't know. But like, just based on what I'm seeing from like pre-release stuff about like what the remake is about, I just get the feeling like this is not going to be in good faith.
Yeah, because I'm okay with a remake. Other than many other people, I know Josh, you posted another video earlier, like people outraged about a remake. I'm okay with a remake if it's done properly. The trailer does not look good. I mean, it looks more they do the remake for the wrong reason. Like you shouldn't do a remake and stay in the same lane because that's just updating graphics, which they don't plan. I would love a remake going the more psychological, mental way. Maybe even like I wouldn't even mind a Tim Burton doing a remake. That might be the most commercial version of you, but maybe a more artsy. But what they're doing with the remake, they're completely going the slasher gore way, like absolutely not what it should
I was
be.
I was about to say, because we talked about briefly in the chat, there was talks of doing an anime, and I could see like if you did The Crow as like 5 episode, like 20 minutes each, you could do like, especially if like here's Skank, here's Fun, but like each episode was a different member.
See it TV series.
Well, like the first episode would be like the introduction of the Crow. 2 through 4 would be like him going through like the different henchmen, and then last one was like top dollar. Like that would be like how you do it, like in a series. But the thing with that is like they're doing it in the movie, just doing this all over again with
Well,
Eric Craven again. It's like you could just do this with something else.
I feel like the other big problem with this remake I saw, um, what felt natural was Eric and Shelley aren't a part of the gang. They're not a part of this violent world. They accidentally got dragged into it, and even just putting like a toe in, got killed. Whereas like the trailer, especially like if you haven't seen, I mean it's a trailer, but they put like the mob, like Shelley seems to see like a mob hit or something. And then they put like executionary bags over their head, but it's also like the main mafia. I'm assuming it's Top Dollar, like Top Dollar's doing it. And I'm like, wait, that makes no sense. Because one of the things I loved in the original movie was he doesn't even know who Top Dollar is. And it doesn't even dawn on Eric to be like, oh, someone signed off on this. This wasn't just a random act. This was someone's choice. So he's like,
Yeah,
no, it
Top
was these
Dollar
four
tells
guys.
him who did it.
Yeah. And also with the new remake, it literally feels closer to Spawn in tone than The Crow. Um, and especially taking like all the Sarah lines and having some random dude say it. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, plus what doesn't sit right with me is like the with the 94 movie, it's like they're obviously innocent people being dragged into like a bad situation. With the remake, it's posited that like they had a dark past, quotes, and it's like that feels like it takes a lot of like the heart out of the movie originally, because like, oh no, because then you're thinking of something like, well, they brought this on themselves, and it's like, no, you shouldn't be thinking of that about like senseless crime and like what's happening to these people. Like you should be thinking like, no, I want to see like Eric gets revenge, even if I know like the meth he's going to do for that is not going to be like pleasant to watch.
Yeah, it's not about the gang war. It's about the victim, innocent victim, coping with the outcome and kind of taking matters in their own hands.
Hmm.
Also, like, I swear this is going to age like mullets and bell bottoms, but the random tattoos is such a bad look. And it's
Yeah, it looks very Jared Leto Joker-y.
and the other thing is, so with the Crow, because like you have Sting the wrestler, but you have the white theater like cake mask, then the black iconography on top of it to make the Crow. Whereas in this, they do more like they pseudo change the black iconography, but Bill Skarsgård doesn't have that white cake makeup. He just has his flesh tones. So I don't know. It just like I spend more time looking at the random tattoos than his face.
Yeah, it's too busy of a design if you want to go with that. It's like if you were to draw this on like paper, it would take less time to draw like the original Crow than it would to draw this new one.
And they wouldn't be able to recreate the makeup. I believe one of the documentaries mentioned that how they put the makeup on Brandon Lee was they put it on a day before, and he went to bed with the makeup on, so it would look washed out the next day when they were shooting the movie. So that's how they got the effect of not looking like a clown mask, but like actually washed out overnight by natural like movements, wear and tear. Where yeah, in a movie, especially of that like aspiration. It doesn't look like they're going for much more than just splatter. They would put that effort into making the makeup right or getting other aspects right of this.
Well, and I feel like the irony is with James at the beginning being like, we don't know why he's back. We don't, because it seems
No.
like in the new movie, they're going to show that. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to add anything. I think it's going to take away.
Yeah, and sometimes you
I'm-
don't need to know how because that's not really important. The fact is that he is back and we're following what he's about to do. Like you don't need to know
Yeah.
like the logistics
I
of this.
did.
Dude, God.
You did what? You did need to know, or
Why he came back? How?
you have an
Was it
explanation?
I want to know how he did. Was it magic? Was it clothes?
Yes.
I think it's
Well, you
fair
see,
they
to me,
don't
it's
say.
he never actually died, and he has to cope with it. But and it's
So he was
just
in
the
a coma.
writer. The writer again in the movie it doesn't work like that because you see him crawling out of the damn grave, and which doesn't work. That's like one of the things
Yeah.
that
So
the
one
bad
thing
things
that-
in the movie. It's like you can see him coming out of the grave. It's like
Yeah,
don't show
so-
me that even. Like just he needs to show up at some point. Like don't show me that. Like just make him appear. Maybe his first scene, just take out Tintin, and then give us back flashes to explain. Don't make his like hand come out of.
Okay,
This
that being
is-
said, I'll let you finish, Josh, but this is something I did appreciate about The Crow, was it took less than 10 minutes for us to get to the damn points. We weren't going to spend like 40 minutes building up to The Crow coming in. We just
Yeah.
go like, okay, we established the backstory, now run with it. So now it's like within the first 25 minutes, we're seeing him take out Tintin. Like we know like the plan is in action and what the plot is going to basically be like from like the first 10 minutes, and that is very refreshing especially for like comic book movies where like it sometimes takes a bit to get the ground running.
I agree with that.
I just love how James is like, I can't accept this bullshit because they didn't give me bullshit reasoning. Like, but then I also love with Torsen. It's like, this is like the Thing graphic novel all over again. It's like, I can't accept this bullshit because I read bullshit somewhere else.
And
Because
to
it
be
comes
clear,
from
that-
somewhere. The writer
Well,
had an
no.
intention. The writer was coping with the loss of someone. So this is the Eric Draven coping with the loss of his fiancée. He doesn't
he
have
came
to
ba-
have died. He just has to go through the realization, not knowing previously that she was dead. Like he doesn't have to necessarily die for him to be like, oh, I didn't know she died. She died, and now I'm gonna go and find who did that. You don't need to do this whole mumbo jumbo like, oh, he came back from the grave after 1 year buried, and yeah.
To joke a little bit, I guess death has a sense of humor then if it comes back literally a year later to take revenge.
I wait too long sometimes to hit heavy wins.
It's like the anniversary, the 1 year anniversary in the movie. It'll be the 30 year, or it is the 30-year anniversary of
Next
the
month.
movie.
That's why
Next
I'm glad
month.
to talk about it now because it's kind of relevant now with not only a remake happening, but it being the 30th anniversary of the movie.
Yeah, and the remake is scheduled for what, August 23rd this year.
Here,
Josh.
I will solve both the James and Torsen's problem all at once. Are we ready for this?
No, but go ahead.
Old Marley was as dead as a doorknob. Mind, I don't mean to say that of my own knowledge. What there is particularly dead upon a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of iron monogamy in the trade. But the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and the unhollow hands shall not disturb, or oh my gosh, it does not go as I thought it was. Basically, I'm quoting Christmas Carol. The Marleys were dead, and without knowing that, none of the rest of this movie would make sense.
I thought you were quoting the Bible and the resurrection.
Yeah.
The problem is I'm used to the Muppets Christmas Carol, and I'm like, this is not the Muppets. That was Charles Dickens.
This ain't December, Josh. We're in the middle of April right now.
I'm curious because the other thing they talked about in the documentary, because Brandon Lee originally wanted to shoot all this in black and white and then have the flashbacks be in color. But the studio's like, yeah, we're not doing that. So hence why most of the movie it's like it's raining. It's like blues. Like there's not a lot of color in the movie for that goal.
They could do that
See,
now.
that would make sense why the flashbacks are like very multicolor, sometimes like red, blues, like as opposed to like when it cuts back and it's like very like not say plain looking, but looks normal.
And the only time like they bring up Red is when he's the Revenger about to kill. Like that's the only time like Red kind of gets brought back up.
Hmm. That or it's like intimate moments between him and Shelley, so it's like a mix of the two.
That I think you get a little bit of sunshine, but you don't get like the stark red, especially like Fun Boy or what's Top Dollar second dude going up the stairs. There's like that red light behind him.
Do you mean like the one the top hat? Not top hat, the I
He
forget his name, but I knew who you're
Top
talking
dollar.
about.
not Top Dollar, the black his the number two dude with the like he had the other black like the other black villain than Tintin. His name is literally Grange in the movie.
Yeah, he was the one who brought in Gideon to get stabbed through the chest.
Branch. Tony Todd
Tony
playing
Todd?
Grant.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Candyman himself?
Yeah.
He was in quite a few movies.
He was
Yeah,
the
a
voice
bunch
of
of.
Venom in Spider-Man 2 recently. I
Also,
didn't recognize him at all.
yeah, because what's crazy is like I always mistake him for the dude at the beginning of The Mask.
Yeah,
Because
that's who I thought it was.
yeah, especially because I feel like there's that archetype, especially in the '90s, of like the clean cut black gangster with like the little round sunglasses. Like that became such a cliche.
And that's like the Die Hard, like where he brought in Die Hard, like that kind of same, not exactly like the muscle, but like the brains behind the operation kind of a thing, like the second in command kind of a thing. Like I didn't realize that was Tony Todd till this now. That's so
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, he was also in the Final Destination movies.
Yeah, you think he played Death in that movie, or the personification of it, though.
Also, because we kind of dance around it, but man, that scene with Fun Boy, just between them, I didn't realize that was the scene he died in, man. That because that was one of my favorite scenes, especially because when I first saw this, I was still the good Mormon kid, like the Jesus joke, him dragging Fun Boy into the bathtub. I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah, which I was confused why he dragged him into the bathtub. I guess because he went in shock.
Yeah, because he was high, he shot himself, so he passed out from the pain, but he wanted him alive. Because
For at least a little bit longer, but yeah.
yeah, well, because it's like, and I'm curious with the remake, because like Tintin got stabbed in all the vital organs in alphabetical order. Like it
See,
almost went.
I don't know if that was just David Patrick Kelly being colorful when he said that, or if it's just like because you see it like sticking mostly out of his chest. I didn't see more of it anywhere else, but I could also see that being like just a colorful, like yeah, he got staff and pillow the post kind of a
But
thing.
um, Fun Boy got all the needles in the heart though.
Yeah, with the calling card in his chest too.
Mm-hmm. Because I feel like yeah, like Skank and like T-Bird didn't get it off easy because I feel like T-Bird like his mind snapped at the end. Like
Not only did his mind snap, but he also got basically fused to his own car via explosives. Which A, how long did that take for him to get tied up like that? And B, how did he find all those explosives? But this is also like suspension of disbelief,
well, they
whatever.
were they,
It's not
they were
important.
no, the explosives were in the back of the car because they were supposed to start blowing. They
Oh,
were
that's right.
yeah,
That's right. They were supposed to be prepping for it, so he got like caught with his own stash, basically. Okay,
yeah.
that makes sense. I was thinking like for a second, like, okay, where did Eric find all these explosives? Like that doesn't make any sense at all. Now I say it out loud.
Because that's the thing. Like Tintin got killed with his own knives. Fun Boy got killed with his own drugs. T-Bird got killed with his own explosives.
And Skank got skanked against the car. So
Yeah, like Skank just life killed Skank.
basically, like I'm surprised he didn't like die. Like, thank you for this information, Pop.
I gotta say that's like one of the nicest car explosions in a movie. Like where it jumps, explodes, and you see like the chassis separating from the wheels, and it's like very nicely done. One of the best car explosions I've seen.
It is
So
surprisingly clean for that amount of explosives in the trunk of the car.
And that's exactly how it looked like when I was like reenacting the A-Team episodes back when I was a kid with like little China crackers and firecrackers, putting them in my Matchbox cars and like blowing stuff up. It's like, yep, that's someone having fun.
I worked on an indie movie where we blew up a car. I never realized this. Like when they blow up a car, it is literally like the shell of the car. Like there's not even seats in there unless they like need to show it. But it's like it is literally like the frame and wheels because they take out the gas, they take all the engine parts and stuff like that. So it is kind of. I guarantee you, like that whole car was just like, hey, we can fit them. Like since we took everything out, let's just put explosives everywhere.
See, I could have sworn there was some in the back seat too, just stuffed in there. Because he even throws a grenade at like T-Bird's crotch at one point just to like light the fuse. I'm like, that seems like overkill at this point.
I mean, he overkilled all of them. Like you do not need to put that many needles in a man's heart.
That guy won't be coming back from the dead now.
That'd be a great sequel. How about the henchman coming back, being guided by the crow?
See, they're not innocent though, so that would make no sense. That would actually be bigger slap in the face than the remake.
I feel like it's two things. One, I don't know if this story needs a sequel because I feel like it's one and done. Like we're good. Two, yeah, I can understand a reason to remake it, but it's like okay, if you're going to remake it, no matter what remake, you're going to get judged against the original, and a legendary actor's son, Bruce Lee's son, died in the making of the original, so that's a higher bar to cross. It's like, yeah, it's like you can do it, but man, that's a lot of pressure from the get go.
Especially when the movie is this good. My own personal opinion there. Whereas, like, yeah, for a lot of people, this is a cult classic kind of movie where, like, it still sticks with them even this many years later, to the point where, like, some people are, like, actively refusing to even watch the remake because of, like, how much they love the original movie.
Uh, that and it looks terrible. Like it looks terrible.
Yeah, but I mean, like, some people are, like, you say the word remake, it's almost a dirty word, even though remakes are, like, not new. Like, Scarface from '83 was a remake.
The Thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like remakes
But
are
that
just
remake was actually better than the original.
like
But
remakes are just bound to happen with enough time and money and patience. But it's also like how you do the remakes that make it like stand just on its own.
because I feel like the other big problem is like I feel bad whoever's playing Top Dollar because you're not going to get like some of the great moments. Like, how are you feeling? Like a little worm on a big fucking hook. Like
But you
a
gotta think
little
what
worm on a big fucking hook.
there's probably a lot of people who haven't seen this movie too.
Greed is for amateurs. I wish I had that guy's voice.
Especially at the end when he has the audacity to be like, if it's any consolation, you put a smile on my face, friend.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you motherfucker. And James, I think you're right. Well, because it's on. It's kind of weird because this is a Miramax. I didn't even look. Is this one of the
I don't care. I was right. That's all I need.
I was gonna say, is it that fucker who produced it?
Weinstein?
Yeah, that's the one.
No, I don't think so.
I
Because it's
think it was
Miramax.
going to go through Paramount, then went through Miramax. This production history it could be its own like discussion itself.
Doesn't look like it.
It's almost a
No, it
miracle
Yeah,
that it got
says
made.
Edward Pressman,
Yeah.
Chaldecott Job, and Jeff Most.
You know what? And this might be the kind of thing where you probably let's piss off some Gen Z. Um, so I think the problem is like the weird thing with millennials, we grew up with a lot of old IP and stuff. Because when cable first got invented, they needed stuff to fill. So they're like, hey, let's throw on I Love Lucy and the Andy Dick Show at 11 o'clock at night because we need to fill in those hours. Gen Z comes along, anything made like in the 90s, they count old as hell. So yeah, it's like there's probably a good amount of people who haven't seen this classic.
It's
See,
80 years old. Imagine watching a movie in the 90s being from the 60s.
Yeah.
see,
It's
what I'm hoping for is like with the remake coming out, it's going to put more attention on the '94 movie, so people who haven't watched it like the past 30 years can go back and watch and be like, oh, I see what this is going for. I appreciate what this like the style this movie is going for. That is also like wishful thinking on my part, but it's also like a hope I have because like I think if you're going to watch the remake, you should watch the original and like see how you like it compared to like what they're going to do with it.
I hope people go and read the book because actually that's my biggest takeaway is that I was introduced to the comic book, which is a great comic book, probably the best read I've read this year so far. It's a pretty
Really?
good book. It's
Well,
yeah.
you haven't read John's book yet. Come on in May.
I've read that already last year, so that's like my read of 2023. So it's
I can't put a volume 2 in my top 10.
I will say this. One, thank you for the plug, James. But I think this is the year I'm finally going to pull the because I love this movie so much. Part of me didn't want to read the comic because it's like, it's like,
it's better.
well, that's. I was like, is it going to live up to the hype?
It's very good, and like that's my main thing. I wish a remake would be closer to the book versus what the trailer looks like.
Because I don't even think James O'Barr is a part of this remake, which
I don't think
No,
he
he regrets
will want.
making The Crow or like The Crow in general just because of like what led to the '94 movie. So like I'm not surprised if he wouldn't be like attached to anything more from it.
because and I'm not judging him. I would not be surprised if he got like a check from all the other sequels and stuff.
Well, he
See,
probably did.
I don't know because like I think most of those are either direct to video or just like very, very small theatrical runs at best. So it's like I'm not sure if like what residuals he would have gotten from it.
I mean, if it's based off of his work, it's like they have to base off his work. Like they have to give something, I think.
It depends on how the initial contract is, right? If they just
Yeah.
purchase the rights for of him, then he has nothing. If he was smart enough to put like, hey, royalties, then yeah.
Well, now you have to nowadays to be safe.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. I guess I'm curious too, because it's like, from my understanding, I know he's done other comic book work, but nothing has like topped The Crow.
Now, that's one of the things that he said in that interview. He doesn't want to even write for Marvel or
Yeah,
DC
yeah.
because he could never do a Spider-Man or a Batman story because he's not emotionally invested and he would only do things that really move him, where he puts so much time and energy in creating this. Again, this took him like 9 years to make a 5 issue. Like, it's not a long book. It's not a long run, right? It's like 4 issues, but then he published like a prequel and a sequel in like the Caliber anthology series of a friend of his that published those. And I think it's like 180 pages in total, something like that. But that took him 9 years. So he's like, I put so much heart and energy into this. I'm not writing anything that doesn't move me. Like, and yeah, I can see how I
Well,
might be done with things because what a life.
It's never just going to be something pure and entertaining. It's always going to have to have a personal statement from me in it. Otherwise, I can't bring myself to do it. As much as I try to turn myself into a comic book whore, I just can't seem to do it. I can't seem to squeeze out a Spider-Man story or X-Man story. I just can't find it in myself to invest that much time and energy and emotion into it. So I just have to keep doing what I can do.
I guess I'm curious because that original interview was for the 2000 special edition. So it's like, I guess I didn't look, I could look it up, but it's like, what is he doing nowadays? So I just found this out. The creator of Well, the creator of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, who invented like Cartoon Network's Adult Swim and a lot of humor that we now have, is an Amazon driver.
And Alex Proyas, the director of this movie, I think his last movie was like Gods of Egypt in 2016, and
Yeah, it was
What?
not good.
yeah, he went on to do some more movies like this. Like Dark City was a movie that came on after The Crow, which I recommend if you're into like a science fiction detective story. I would recommend that as a watch after The Crow. But like Torsten said, he also did I, Robot, and then later did Gods of Egypt. So like a very interesting career for Alex Proyas going off The Crow.
Looks like James O'Barr, he did movies almost every year until 2013 and then nothing since.
I wonder how much of the '94 movies because of Brandon Lee,
What do you mean?
like how well it came out. Because it's like, was he pushing like the script supervisor? Like, was he the one like pushing all this stuff? Because it seems like everything after The Crow, like even like the other movies the director made wasn't as good as The Crow, I would say.
I think a lot of it also has to kind of do with like what we're saying about the remake is like trying to make more with this story doesn't quite it's not going to be as good for whatever reason. It's like it has that kind of emotional tether to it that people had towards Brandon Lee and what he was doing for this movie in general. Like he literally gave his life to make this movie happen.
I mean, the Crow comic book also has follow-ups, right? He wrote sequels and stuff. I have not read them, so I don't know how and what comes out of it. I can imagine those are other characters, different characters other than Eric, because Eric's arc was kind of done. But yeah.
Yeah, because like
Also, Josh, you would appreciate this. As a John Wick fan, the stunt double for Brandon Lee in The Crow went on to direct John Wick.
really,
Hmm.
that makes sense. Because yeah, the what like John Wick plot wise, yeah, it's not that great, but the
I think John Wick's pretty good, better than this movie.
I can see the DNA of The Crow being led to John Wick, though.
but
Same thing with the Matrix.
but like I said, it's the cinematography, the action, like that's what's amazing about it. I love John Wick's. Yeah, because I feel like so it's I just read Poison Elves like a few weeks ago. You have Dawn, but there's a lot of this like 90s black and white. I don't know, there's certain like 90s comics that The Crow fits into. Because yeah, it's and I James isn't wrong. Like I think The Matrix took a lot of style, not from like The Crow directly, but that movement and that time period.
And Blade, and
Yeah. Well,
definitely
no.
Wesley Snipes' Blade. But yeah,
Oh yeah, Blade's biggest mistake, if that came out like a year earlier, it would have got a lot more attention. But since The Matrix was right behind it,
yeah, it came out in that sweet spot between 94 and 99. Came out in 97. So it managed to make its way like known, but not like be like, oh, this is a cheap carbon copy of like what I've already seen.
also because we all talk about like, because everyone's like, oh, Blade was the modern comic book movie. I think The Crow was in some ways.
I
See,
thought
yeah,
X-Men
'cause,
was.
like I said, like a lot of the DNA stuff I seen for The Crow, I would also see in stuff that's happening nowadays. Like the scene where like the it was with T-Bird, like T-Bird explodes and like he lights the symbol of the crow on the floor, like that lights up. I swear I seen that in the 2003 Daredevil movie
Oh yeah.
with Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
Like that was like straight lifted from that.
But Blade, as well as The Crow, you don't feel like it's a comic book movie. I mean, yes, the aesthetics, yes, but if you don't know that it was a comic book movie, you wouldn't be like, oh, it's definitely based on a comic book. Like any Batman, and without even knowing the character of like a Batman or Spider-Man, you know, like maybe it's the costumes and the superpowers, because it's not really that the Crow has any super. I mean, yeah, well, he came from back from the dead, so it's like,
Wait,
No reason
the-
how, but yes.
I come at this from the unique perspective that like my first experience with The Crow was after watching like Sting, the wrestler in WCW, used his exact same gimmick. So like that was like, oh, I wonder where this came from. And I read like that Scott Hall, another wrestler, gave Sting the idea to take on this character of the Crow after watching the movie. So like, okay, I should probably watch the Crow, like see where the inspiration came from. And it's like, wow, this is like even the narration is like lifted straight up for like they use later in the wrestling. So it's kind of amazing how much that well like gels together like the comic books and like the super and wrestling genres a little bit.
The only thing with Sting is just it is what it is. But it's like it's weird seeing wrestlers age because it's like I don't know if if Brandon Lee was alive today. It's like I don't know if I want to see like a 60-year-old Brandon Lee as the Crow.
See, that's the weird thing too, is like it almost kind of sometimes like it does feel like you're watching like what an older Eric Draven would be like in this character in a little sense. Like, of course, later it would be more like almost more Batman than Eric Draven, but it is kind of fascinating seeing like this look kind of change and evolve over the years as like Steve Borden, aka Sting, is taking the character like beyond what you would think would be a past the expiration date.
Because I know like I swear like yeah, Eric becomes this like vigilante for the unjust where it's like I have been some like he's basically Ghost Rider where it's like you could just make a Ghost Rider movie.
That seems to fit.
That's why you're wearing this shirt. I figured I wear a shirt like that's similar to the aesthetics of how how they look like in the movie has more hair. I don't know if anyone knows Roxette, but like kind of the hairstyle is Eric's hairstyle in the book, and
A pompadour?
well, you don't know Roxette.
It's
That's a pompadour.
Yeah, I have no idea. But
it's like very like 80s new wave kind of haircut. I'm looking like
yeah, but he was born in the 80s, so he know what it is.
The best Swedish rock band that ever existed.
it's not ABBA.
Aber that's not rock.
Oh, I'm here for this argument because I have no skin in this game.
No, you know Roxette songs. I'm sure. Some at
I
least. Maybe
probably don't.
I think I've heard like at least a couple, but
I know ABBA.
I just had to put the ABBA joke in there to see if Josh would get it.
just because Sweden. He said Sweden. Either it's IKEA or ABBA.
So I won't lie, like I can see the flaws in this movie, especially like the detective. I mean, there's little random things like the detective. I'm like, he makes no sense.
Yeah, the detectives just bog standard at the time, like, I'm gonna have your badge for this, you son of a you know if you've seen his character before in like a dozen other movies.
But what's weird is he's not a desk sergeant. Like usually that's a sergeant or a captain, where it's like, why is this detective? Like, yeah, he's over you, but he's not.
But that's such a small detail. I think the biggest flaw is that Eric doesn't have any pushback. Like it's very predictable, right? Like you can see what's coming. He's going through the henchmen up to top dollar one by one, and that's what happens. He doesn't have any pushback. He doesn't have that big thing to overcome. Like it's just he's there. He gets there. You know, he's gonna get there.
My memory of this movie is it kind of goes all over the place when I think about it because I keep thinking the scene with Tintin comes later and T-Bird comes first. Like I kept thinking like, oh, like obviously he goes up like the chain, of course, but I keep thinking like my issue with it is like you could pretty much put like him killing off T-Bird, Tintin, or Fun Boy and switch them between any other kind of scenes and it would still make sense. There's no like pacing with that kind of stuff. But that's also like not that big of a deal. It just kind of gets more like grandiose with like each kill, really.
Like I said, that's why I like the theory that once Skank, like once all four of them are dead, he starts losing his powers. Like I don't know, it's one of those. Especially, I love the lines, I love the delivery, so it's like I will apologize. I am basically the opposite of James in this movie.
Yeah, I love this movie. It is like it is a shame I don't have a physical copy of it because I wish I did right now.
Especially the 30th anniversary. I'm curious if we'll get like an updated Blu-ray or something.
There is
I
supposed to be
don't.
like a 4K copy of it coming out next month. So
Yeah, pre-order it.
So James, are you gonna go watch the remake and be like, "This is better than anything"?
I'll probably wait for it to come to Paramount.
This is the same man who doesn't like ribbons in his books.
Don't need
to be
them.
fair, I do agree with James about that.
No, you need your ribbon. Every book with
No,
a
you
red
don't.
ribbon.
See, a ribbon doesn't make me enjoy the book anymore. It's just a necessary accoutrement to the book. Use my
I have to find a
$4 bill.
bookmark otherwise. I don't have bookmarks laying
Anything
around.
can be bookmarks. Anything.
Yeah, but then you
See,
lose that item. Like if I have, I don't
as
know,
long as the
something
book
that I
isn't like
need.
pulling apart, I'm happy with it. Really.
Hey, if I'm spending like the book is like 125, 150 for retail, throw a ribbon in there. I don't care
And
if
how
you
much is that for women? $10 more?
No, it's not. Every TMNT hardcover comes with a ribbon, and
Only the first
that's
printing. The
cheaper
second one
than.
doesn't have it.
every one
So-
of
No, they
my
do. No, they all do. It's just which printing. There's a certain, like the third print or something doesn't have a ribbon anymore. All of the volumes have a ribbon. If you get the right printing.
or all of Dark Horse Berserk, all of Dark Horse Deluxe manga has a ribbon.
I don't
Okay,
use
I
them.
should clarify. I don't mind there being ribbons, but I don't necessarily need to have it of ribbons.
Monster.
Okay,
huge-
but what James just said is even worse. Like if there's a ribbon, okay, you don't mind if there's a ribbon, but if there's a ribbon and you still don't use it, so James, you're putting a bookmark on a book you have a ribbon with.
Yes.
What? Now I
I
got
don't
confused
use
with
them.
that.
No, that doesn't make sense.
No, if there's a ribbon there, you got to use it. That's why it's built there. But like, if it
No.
doesn't have it, I'm not gonna be like, needs a ribbon in it.
Look, I feel like I like to troll people. I feel like this is a topic James has learned. He's like, I can troll people and no one can really question him because it's not like, well, prove it. It's like, well, no, we know.
It's an opinion, but James, in your mind,
Terrible opinion.
just why didn't you like the movie?
Oh, I got needed more plot to it.
Needed more plot. Yeah, he's just going off and killing those 4 or 5 guys.
But who's gonna die next?
To be fair, there is also that whole thing with like him giving like Sarah a bit more of like closure in a sense because she never really got over like Shelly
All he did for her was get her on drugs.
and saved her life from getting hit by a car.
I'm
Eh.
sorry. Cleaning up her mom from Morphine Edition. That is, yeah.
Also,
But do
that
we
was
know if the mom actually takes care of her after, or is
that
she
was a
just
funny
gonna
scene
continue?
where like Darla is like looking after Sarah like, so how do you like your eggs? And like Sarah's giving out about the eggs, like I don't like eggs, Darla. And he's like, I don't like being this mom thing anyway, and she's about to toss him, and Sarah's like, actually, over easy, and they just
I
kind of
love
share.
that scene.
Yeah, it's
That
a
was
very
such a good
scene.
scene.
Also, because I feel like the first time you see Darla, like I don't know what the crew's called. Like they don't really have a name. But the four individuals, because when she's serving them, there's a lot of fear in her eye, and you can almost tell. Like, I feel like in the back of her mind, she's like, "We should not be with them. We've made terrible choices." But that
I'm
addiction,
in too deep. I can't get out of the situation. It's almost like the abuse kind of a thing coming into play. Because we don't know where Sarah's dad is, because that could be really anybody based on that. But that's also reading into it way too much.
because it's the
Well,
same. It's the same bar that they used to play at, the Hangman Jack or Hangman Jake.
Hangman's Joke.
Is that what they're called? That makes sense.
Yeah, because their song is Last Laugh. I read that on the record thing. That's why like it skips back a little bit because I was confused by that too.
Because
But like Sarah's
T-Bird,
like,
because
listen back to
T-Bird
lyrics.
touches the photo of the band on the wall.
Mhm.
Also, I swear, like their logo and stuff is like was inspired by Social Distortion.
Oh, I'm gonna take your word for that. That's not clicking in my head right now.
Not like the music, but the logo. It's like, yeah, that's very Social D. Basically, I enjoy this movie more than Fear and Loathing.
I agree with that.
That comment gonna get edited out later on.
See, I don't know because like I wasn't here for the Fear and Loathing discussion. I wish I was.
That was a confusing movie.
Well, like the thing is about is like these are two different genres of movies to compare it to because one is like an acid trip and the other one isn't. So
Torsten Lowe. Basically, me saying this is the equivalent of telling Omar that X-Men are meh.
you're wrong about that too, just so you're aware of. But yeah, I don't know like what number I would rate this movie. I would probably go around 8 or 9. Like it
So
would not be like,
I would say probably 8 for me.
but
I
I
go
would
with the
say
7.
as far as movies go, the '90s, I would definitely say you could do a lot worse than this. I think it's highly recommended for me.
Torsten, what did you give this movie?
7 out of 10, which isn't horrible. Like I mean, seven is already you're doing more right than wrong.
So
But-
let's see.
So no, because on that scale, you would have the worst score would be a 4, like A, B, C, F, down to F. F being the worst score, that's a 4. But technically, on a 0 through 10 scale, that would be a 0. So
Yeah.
C, solid C, would be more like a 6.
We're going by the Rotten Tomatoes scale where they go by like 100. So it's like 70,
70 out of 100,
like a
70%.
First tomato.
So what's funny is I thought James was going to give this a lower score than Torsten.
I can.
I was expecting James to be like, "This is a 5."
But it's like, this is horrible. It's like 8 out of 10. It's like 8 out of 10 are like one of the best movies.
Well, it had an okay plot. I mean, good action scenes. And it was
7 out
shot
of 10.
good.
Too much church. Felt like I was at Sunday school.
James, do you keep track of what everyone rates movies?
No.
Can we start doing that? Mainly because if Torsten gives this a 7, I am very curious on some of the other films.
I'm trying to find, there was one scene, like we haven't talked even about the eye scene. Like that poor girl that lays around in the background, you think like, okay, they're having a threesome or something. And then he's like moving her around. She's like completely dead. He's like, does she have a
I think
pulse?
at one point they did, it's just now they don't. So
Yeah.
I'm
And then
pretty
like they're
sure I talked
pointing that
about
eye.
crazy. I like the lights, bitch. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
yeah,
I like the pretty lights.
that like I said, I like the idea, but it felt like an excuse to give the character or the not character, but the movie a little bit more of a supernatural bent to it than I think it probably needed.
That's
'Cause,
what
like-
made it R-rated. Like some of the other scenes, they could have done a little bit more. Like I was like for a long time, I was like, oh, why is this R-rated? And then the eye scene is like, oh yeah, no.
Yeah, because like even the stuff that is like, if I'm explaining to you like what happens to drive Eric, like what kills Eric and Shelley, yeah, you would think that would make this movie an R if I like tell you it, but they don't actually show that much.
Which I'm kind of grateful for because I'm like, I do not need to see the rape scene.
Yeah, no, you don't need to
Yeah.
see it, but which makes it more horrifying if you think about it, like the mind's eye is like filling in the gaps. But it's like it's almost like, wow, this really doesn't feel that much rated R. Then you get to those scenes later, it's like, oh, there it is.
I think the other thing is the heroin bathroom scene. I think that's another reason why it's R.
Yeah, squeezing that the morphine from the Darla's arm. Yeah, that's a squicky scene to put for lack of a better word.
Yeah, because like I think Top Dollar is amazing. I don't even know what his sister's name is because it's just like she's almost like background. It's like okay.
I read it was
And
like
how he tries to apologize or how he tries to explain it. It's like, that's my sister. It's like, what, that's your sister? Like being this, it's like, we have the same dad. It's like, well, it's still the same thing. Like, don't make it sound like it's less problematic.
It's
Just
only
like-
incest. It's like ugh.
just like how that was barely even a footnote in the movie, and it's like the only like record of like that person's character is like they're into supernatural occult stuff Elsa and their siblings. Gross either way, but
Well,
okay.
You know what?
go watch Game of Thrones House of the Dragon.
I was gonna say, what kills me is all of a sudden in my mind I heard, "Oh, Step Brother." It's like, yeah, they did first.
I was
Um,
trying to look up where they were like, wow, we couldn't, Hollywood didn't allow us to make this a black and white movie. It's like, when did black and white movies became okay at a higher budget? Sin City didn't come out until 2005. So it's like a 10, 11 years in between. Somewhere in between it must have been like,
Are we
it's
not
okay now.
counting the movies of the 30s and 40s that were in black and white?
No. Like again, this is from The Crows from '94, and they like, we can't do black and white. It's too artsy. And then Sin City came out. There was
They wanted to do Airplane in black and white too, and Paramount didn't want them to.
because I know, shoot, Clerks was done black and white because he couldn't afford color. Felt like the film was cheaper.
Schindler's List was also in black and white.
Yeah, but that was
was
also
Spielberg.
that was the artsy choice with like the red scarf and it's Spielberg, so it's like you're not going to say no to Spielberg.
That
Right,
even
but
came out before.
would that be any
Yeah.
different than what we got out of this if like if they're having like flashes of black and white or not black and white, but like black and white like what's happening currently and then flashes of color what's happened in the past?
I think it would have I think it would have I don't know if it would have been like, oh my gosh, this made this movie so much better, but it would have been an interesting tone, especially because usually like in a lot of movies the past is like black and white tinted in some ways. Rarely is it like full color, like overjoyed happy, and the current isn't.
True. Like at most you get the past be like sepia tone color, but that's about it. It'd still be like normal colors in like the modern. I
Or
would be
Mexico.
curious to see like a black and white version of this movie, just out of curiosity, because I think with like how Eric Draven looks normally, I think that would look very interesting. But also it could kind of clash a bit too, as well. I imagine it might look.
I'm trying to remember. There was a film. It was made to be black and white. The studios almost released in color. God, what movie was that? But like
Mad Max Fury Road was also in.
The Wizard of Oz.
Werewolf by Night.
No, because there
That
was
was
like the sets were painted like bright pinks and stuff because they were going for tone, not for color. So it's like if they would have released in color, it would have ruined the movie. We talked about it. I swear we did.
You talk so much. I hard to keep track.
Keeping track of everything.
Not everything. You didn't keep track of the movie ratings.
Right?
I know
And
supposed
which
to.
movies we watched, and like apparently
I get
it's been
that.
9. You said 9.
I get that. Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't count the Oscars.
I counted through that. It should be. No, it's 11. You're right. It's 11 minus 2. It's 9 movies. All right. No. Oh, good.
When was the first month of Movie Club?
Oscars.
Well, first kicked off Oscars in March last year, and then we did Fear and Loathing after. Then after Fear and Loathing, I think, did we do Starship
Yes.
Troopers? And then after Starship Troopers,
Dogman.
Dogma
Oh, Dogma. The Thing.
Yep.
thing.
The
The
thing
Last
was
Unicorn.
good.
Die Hard. Million Asterisk. Force Love. And then The Thing. No, The Crow.
Wait, what was before Die Hard?
The
The
Last
Thing.
Unicorn.
Oh, that's right. I have picked some amazing movies.
I like how that's how you decide to go with that. Not we talk about amazing movies.
No. You're welcome.
No, it's
I
a
like those
pretty
amazing
good.
movies too. It's not just you, man.
I'm just saying, Torsten got. You know what? A lot of movies that I recommend. Torsten loves the book.
The books are better than the movies.
No, like who did Millennium Actress? That was James, right?
That was
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
me.
that was my
What's the
favorite
birthday
discovery. Like I still love Fear and Loathing, but that's something I recommended or put
So,
out there. So, but
do
from
more
stuff that
anime.
I didn't. Uh, Not necessarily. If it's a good movie, it can be either or, right? But like now, from what I've discovered or watched for the first time throughout the movie club, I think Millennium Actress is definitely up
See,
there.
it's hard for me to recommend movies I want to like discuss on here because I'm thinking like, okay, most of the time I want to
Well,
be like, what's something we could talk about that I know is going to get voted for versus like something like is relevant to like today, like
have,
anniversary wise.
have you seen Ninja Control?
That should be like the theme for May is like, what's your guilty pleasure movie we have to vote on?
That's a good one. I like that
I
idea.
have no idea.
Like
You
I'm
gotta
kind
feel
of
bad
guilty
about it.
pleasure movies.
Like
I'm like,
it's
I like this, but I shouldn't.
yeah, you gotta feel bad about nominating the movie, and then super embarrassed if it gets picked and we have to discuss it. And with that, thank you so much for joining today's movie club. Until next month, thank you, Brands, thank you, Josh, and thank you, James. It's been a pleasure.